Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. I would like to call to order the Regional Council meeting for November the 12th to 2024. I'd like to acknowledge that our community is in the traditional territories of the Fort Nelson and the Prophet River First Nations, the Daniza, the Cree, and the Dene peoples. We further recognize the rights provided by our mutual treaty, and we also celebrate the contributions and enduring presence of the Métis people in our region. Please be advised that tonight's meeting is available to the public to attend virtually and is being streamed and recorded. I'd like to start with the sad news that our past Premier, John Horgan, passed away today. I think it's it's an opportunity for us to remember his service to our province. We may have disagreed often on policy and that sort of thing, but he spent a lot of time in the legislature working on behalf of residents of the province, and certainly send our condolences to his family and his friends. So that was sad. On a happier note, I'd like to welcome back to our local government, Mrs. Toni Pike. Welcome, who will be in the capacity of interim chief financial officer until we find another. So welcome back, Toni. Are there any council additions to tonight's meeting? Seeing none, I think staff have one. We need a resolution to designate fire inspectors and a fire investigator. So we will put that under 11.2, outstanding business. Okay, item number 3 is our public comment period. This is an opportunity from anybody in the public who wishes to make comments on tonight's agenda. They can approach the mic at the end of the table, turn it on, let us know who you are and your address, please, and comment about anything that's on tonight's agenda. So is there anybody who would like to do that? Welcome, Cam. So you have 3 minutes, or the council can extend that if by resolution if you need more time than that. Just push the button there, and if the red light comes on, floor is yours.
Okay. My name's Cameron Allen. I live in Fort Nelson, 5312 54th Avenue West, and I'm here to talk about the proposed fire resiliency committee that the NRRM is looking at forming. Myself and Sonia, and there's a few other people have expressed interest to, and I've expressed this interest to you previous, that we would like to be, that I'd like to be part of that fire resiliency committee. We had a good meeting this morning with the NNRRT, and there was a lot of good feedback there as well, which you were a part of as well. Big thing is, I'd really like to make sure that we get off on the right foot with the committee if it's so approved, that and the terms of reference and the frame of reference that we can be included in that developing of it, so that we feel that we've got some kind of input right from the beginning. I know there's rules and regulations you got to go by with the council, which we will recognize and work within those confines. Just maybe some of the terms, we just like to see them up front and go from there. I think there's a lot of good resources in the community with, and I think coordinating those resources, working together with Structural Fire, Fort Nelson Fire Rescue, First Nations, Prophet River, Toad River, and a lot of different other factions, and trying to be a voice for the public back to the council is kind of where I see it going. And there's a lot of good action items that have already come to fruition from the people that I've talked to, that we'd like to hit the ground running. As was said today, fires are already burning out there, and April comes very quickly. So that's all I got to say. I look forward to the resolution, that it will come to fruition, and that we can all work together to make some things happen. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Cam. That is item 8.5 on tonight's agenda, Community Fire Smart Resiliency Committee. Is there anybody else who would like to speak to anything on the agenda? Online, is there anybody? No? Okay, thank you. You're good? Okay, thank you. Adoption of the agenda is in order, please. Councillor Enoch, Councillor Souls, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Oh, I better stop this before it dings. All right. There are two sets of minutes there. The regional council meeting of October 28th and the committee of the whole meeting of October 28th for resolution.
I'll move those for adoption.
Thank you very much, Councillor Roper, and second by Councillor Souls. Any errors or omissions? Council has none. Is there any online? I think Councillor Gerwing is online. Seeing none, staff, any errors or omissions? Seeing none, then all in favor? Opposed? Those are adopted. Thank you. Is there any business arising out of those minutes? Okay. So that brings us to petitions. So our first petition tonight is Ms. Galinsky, Community Coordinator for the Northern Rockies, to give us a bit of a year-end report from the WildSafe summary. I don't know if it's your full report or if it's just a summary, but.
Summary, it's
Okay.
real short, completely long, my presentation before it was finished.
Oh,
So cut a lot shorter really quickly.
thank you very much. Floor is yours.
It seems like I was just here. It's been a fast year. You can just go right to the second slide, Jay, please. It was an interesting year. Smoke, hot weather, air quality, health advisories made it a little bit more difficult this year to go out and do some of the things that we're normally doing. Oh, we skipped one, I think. Oh, maybe not. The other challenge, there was no bears, seriously. I've never seen a year like this. It was very quiet. I suspect that wildfire had a lot to do with it. But when there's no bears, people don't think bears. So we had very low turnouts at any of our workshops, very low turnouts, any of the educational stuff that we did. God, we'd be lucky if some of our booths even garnered a single person. So when they're not here, nobody's thinking about them. There's a sense of complacency. So just the highlights. We did get in front of about 250 students. We reached approximately 1,600 people. We had 7 booths, tagged 208 bins, and Facebook just went crazy this year. And I think a lot of that is because we were away for 20 days and there was a lot of people on Facebook, and that seems to be when we saw our spikes. We knocked on about 144 doors. I started on the 24th. We started bin tagging on May 6th, and then we were mass exodus of the community on the 10th. So we went out 58 times throughout the summer. We tagged 61 bins for being out the night before pickup, so they were out overnight full of garbage. 66 were tagged for being out after 7 p.m. on the day of pickup. We don't go out at 7 p.m. We're usually out there about 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And then 81 bins were tagged for just being overnight, so they're just sitting on the curb empty. And again, we actually go out the following morning now. I don't even do it at night. I give them the whole night to get it off the road. And then I'm usually out and about between 8 and 9. 35 bins were not complying with the bylaw more than once. What we decided on very early on this year is I was going to tag the bin once, and that was it. Give them the information, tag it, and if it happened a second time, then it went straight to bylaw. That was the plan in April when we had the meeting. Obviously the fire department had other priorities this year, rightly so. So none of those next steps happened. So we did see a lot of people, because they weren't getting the sticker, thought they got away with it. So they'd be out another 3, 4, 5 times. So I had to do a little bit more targeted door knocking than I'd like. But nonetheless, we sort of got control of it a bit. Moving forward, if the budget's approved for WildSafe BC, we will continue to support you guys in working towards the Bear Smart status. And as you continue to implement some of the recommendations that were in the human bear conflict management plan that we completed in 2022. One of the biggest areas that we are struggling with, and there's always a competing priority with bylaw, and I understand that, but that is a huge part of that Bear Smart status. So competing areas of focus have made, follow-up and bylaw enforcement difficult. Dedicated resources need to be established so that follow-up and bylaw enforcement can be implemented consistently. We don't do any, we don't ticket, we have no enforcement. That's normally left up to the municipality. So we've had, like I said, the competing factors. The last 2 years prior to this year was, you guys were really concentrating on the unsightly properties, and rightly so, because there was a lot of them within the community. And then this year, obviously, the focus had to be on the wildfires, when we get that as well. But moving forward, I'm just hoping that we have nothing else happen to us, and maybe that can be a little bit more of an area we can start to concentrate on, just to make it a bit easier. Go ahead, Jay. The fruit gleaning project, we lost our partner with the Friendship Center. I'm assuming they didn't answer any of my phone calls, so I assume they didn't want to do it. I kind of did it haphazard off the side of my desk. But what we did find is a lot of people were just putting it out on Facebook. I have apples to pick, or I have, whatever. We should try and find a partner. It works a lot better when somebody's doing it and can coordinate it all together. But again, this was a good year not to have a partner, because like I said, we didn't have a whole lot of bear activity at all within the community. So my annual report, you should receive that by email probably in December. It's finished, but it goes through a series of checks and balances in Kamloops. And then from there, it's emailed to you. I do have some numbers. That is the last slide. There should be one more that says thank you very much, but I didn't get to put that in, so I'm going to blame Jaylene. That was thanking you. But I did get some numbers from the CO service that would have gone in there had I not had to submit it early. 29 bear calls the whole season. That was it, which is unheard of. I mean, I can go back as far as 2006 and just wasn't there. Of those 23, one of those calls was an aggressive bear. One was a confined bear. There were 14 calls, food conditioning. So basically they were one was repeatedly getting into garbage. I believe that one was likely the one. They did put one bear down while we were out of the community, because when we left, the garbage was there and he had a heyday. So they eventually had to put him down. 2 injured and distressed that were present, 4 that were called in as injured and distressed after they left the property, 4 that were orphaned. I know of the one that was on the 317 road. I'm not sure what the other ones were. There were only 3 sightings reported, and that makes up the 29 calls. So a very slow year. I know there was, heat affects wildlife, just the same, the wildfires. There was still lots of food in the bush, towards the end of August, beginning of September. That plays a role. We had a really noisy fall in terms of sirens, on the exact hours that, your bears are usually migrating into the community, and even quads. I watched one, bail as soon as he heard 2 quads. So maybe, just maybe, as much as we don't like those quads zipping around town, maybe they're just being a little bit more helpful than we thought. So in a nutshell, that's it. Short and sweet. Any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions for Kim? When you're door knocking, what kind of a response do you get?
Always good.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. There's been times where I've knocked on the door. Well, there's been lots of times where I'll do my bin tagging, drive by. People know my vehicle. Every once in a while I switch it up. I'll drive by and then I'll look in my rear view mirror and I literally watch these people run out with their carts and put it on the street. And sometimes I double back. It just depends on what kind of a mood I'm in. Most of them, they know what the bylaw is. They know what they're supposed to be doing. They're just not doing it. And as soon as it gets dark, faster, like towards the end of August, beginning of September, the numbers just go up again. I just don't think they think I can see their garbage can in the dark. I'm not sure what it is. But we usually get a good response. Not always. Sometimes we get the same questions. What's the difference of my bin being here and that bin being there? Or I clean my can all the time. Well, yes, you do, but the 4 people around you don't. That's another area we need to focus on, is reminding people to keep their garbage bins clean. A lot of times this year when we were checking bins, oh, there were some that I don't think have ever been cleaned. They were really gross, actually. And some people just want to yell, and that's okay. I just stand there and it is what it is. We have a
Yeah.
bylaw. And yeah, I've never really had much of an issue, to be honest. I mean, I've been called names a couple of times, but
Mm.
been called worse. No worries. So yeah, most people I said, they know. I hand them the paper, they'll hand it back to me. You know, I've only had one that just said, get off my property.
Yeah.
And that was fine. We got off his property.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
thanks so much.
Thanks for the reports.
Sorry? No.
Okay, we're supposed to have a second petition. Mr. Lang, is he here? Sir? Perfect. Mr. Lang would like to talk to us a proposal for a fitness center at the a fitness center within the recreation center. Mr. Lang? The floor is yours, sir.
Hi there. Thank you for having me today. My name is Elias Lang. I grew up in the community in Fort Nelson, and I'm a proud band member of Fort Nelson First Nation. So yeah, basically I'll just get to the point here. I'm interested in utilizing the space that the community set aside and constructed for a gym in the rec center there. I know there are two separate spaces that I guess were possible for it, but I guess my top choice would be the area around the running track. So basically, yeah, I'm hoping to provide the community with a state-of-the-art fitness facility, either privately run through a lease or through a potential partnership. The gym and the equipment would be 100% self-funded. So this is a project that I've been working on, or I guess conceptualizing for some time now, and I do have the funds available now, as well as the time and energy, now that I'm out of graduate school and no longer working with the company that I was working with before. You know, the municipality obviously set that space aside to be a gym, and really, you know, the town is already eating the overhead on the space. So I think it's a great opportunity to potentially bring some more revenue into the community, and as well, you know, contribute to what I would consider critical community infrastructure, and that's access to health and well-being facilities. You know, I understand that there was a petition signed before to prevent the town from using that space. I did want to inquire on that and see what exactly happened there, and whether this could be you know, a feasible opportunity for the community. I've spoken to Murray McDonald, who runs the boxing gym there, and he would be interested in sharing the space. So I really think it's a great opportunity to give our sports teams, to give our community members, and really to give everyone access to, again, state-of-the-art gym equipment. Yeah, so I just wanted to let you know of my intentions, and also maybe get some direction moving forward to see if this is possible, and if so, what the town would like to see.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. So just to get it square in my mind, you are looking to lease space within the existing rec center. You've got a couple of preferred spaces that you're interested in to build a business around fitness.
That's correct.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any questions for Elias? Anybody? Councilor Roper, please.
Thanks very much for the presentation.
Thanks.
I too would like a little bit more information on, you know, what transpired originally. I think the original plan was to have fitness equipment included with the new rec center. I think there were some conflicts there, so I'd like some more information. But also some information perhaps from you. You said the whole thing is going to be self-funded. Do you have your funders identified? What's your timeline if, let's say, there's no further conflicts and the space becomes available? What is your timeline for getting that equipment in there and this business up and running? And what could our patrons and residents expect for fees?
Yeah, so obviously, you know, it would have to be you know, feasible. The business would be, but I would like to bring in some different types of membership. So maybe offering the teams a discount, as well as maybe some seniors or student discounts. But at the same time, you know, you have to make money. In terms of funding, I have the money, the entirety set aside. So I've just been putting money away. So it would be entirely self-funded. I've got there are some, I'd probably procure most of the equipment from here in Calgary. And obviously I'd like to retain ownership of that equipment, even in the case of a partnership. But really, I'm ready to go. Just I could probably have a gym up in a month. Like honestly, it wouldn't take that long. I've priced out the equipment. So that, you know, everything from treadmills to ellipticals to free weights to plates to you know, dumbbells that go from 5 to 150 pounds, which would be nice as a big guy. But really, this is a passion of mine that you know, I've wanted to, but I've been thinking about for some time now. And I think that space is absolutely gorgeous. You know, the flooring is all in there. There's a running track. It overlooks the pool. I think it has great potential, and I think it has great potential for our community again to generate some revenue, but also offer a service that I don't believe we have right now. I know there are some pre-existing gyms, but I don't see those spaces as inclusive or really state of the art. I think the equipment is pretty old, and I think I would be able to do a better job of managing a gym on my own in that space.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I know that there are currently programs in those spaces now, and so I think we probably have to work, you know, collectively with the staff at the rec department and our management team to determine whether or not, you know, those programs could be relocated, you know,
Okay.
that are happening over there, or not. And a report will come. So what I'd sure like to do is defer this to our staff. So I look to our deputy CAO, Ms. LaVale. What generally is the process for leasing, you know, some space at the municipality? What's the administrative process that we'd use?
So I'll just reference, so in our current facility, we lease the concession space, which was open for a public bid opportunity. So it you know, we could prepare a report that would outline any options that's available and include some of the history as to why that space is not currently a fitness facility, because that was a conscious decision made by a previous council.
Right.
So we could bring back a report outlining options and provide a bit of that history as to that space and its current use.
So would you suggest that Mr. Lang interact with who, the rec department, or with, because really we should get his proposal and understand his proposal as part of that report.
So we can reach out to Mr. Lang and yeah, connect him with the right staff member.
Okay.
Yeah.
So have you talked to anybody yet, Mr. Lang, with respect to this idea that you've got at the municipality? Have you forwarded any information yet?
Well, I've just been in touch with Jaylene. I let her know of my intention, but really no, I mean, before I start putting things together formally or getting the word out there, I just wanted to first of all let council know what my intention was, and also see if it was possible, because I understood that approval would need to come from council, as I understand it, to be able to lease that space out. So
Yeah, that's the process. So I would suggest that when you can or when you're ready, that you reach out to our staff and start the formal process with respect to leasing that space. It sounds like there was there was a resolution of council in the past that prohibited that space from being used or restricted it from being used somehow. So you know, that information will have to come forward to us to see if it's still valid. We'll have to
Okay.
look at what programs are in there now, and whether or not those could be relocated. And yeah, and then move forward with respect to, you know, an evaluation. And I'm not sure if it has to go to public. It's not the same as a sale of land, is it? It doesn't need to be advertised as a competition to lease the space. We should be able to lease to anybody that we want to. Aren't we able to do that?
well, I
Yes.
would think
Yes,
so.
okay. Go ahead.
So it's at your discretion of how you enter into an agreement.
Yeah.
But it is a disposition of land in a lease because you're giving exclusive occupancy. So
Right.
we just need to advertise that we're doing it,
Okay.
which it's, so you may want to offer the space through a public process, or you may want to pursue a single lessee, which would result in public notification, which may result in feedback.
Response, yeah.
So it's just weighing the pros and cons of the
Thank you. I should have
approach.
been more general in my request. There's a public process for looking into it, yeah, for leasing that property. Okay, good. So, yeah, thanks for your presentation. I think we understand what you're looking for. I think there is a process, and if you can reach out to staff, they'll start that process for you, and they'll make a report back to council. Oh,
No,
I'm
thank you.
sorry. Councillor Goering, I'm sorry. Councillor Goering has her hand up and I didn't see her there. Councillor Goering, you have a question?
Just a comment, and I think you probably addressed it, but what I heard was I wouldn't want Mr. Lang to go to a pile of work to create a proposal if council isn't willing to entertain leasing that. And as was previously mentioned, that the council, I don't know, I think it was a few terms ago, made the conscious decision not to lease that out to anybody. So from my perspective, I just wouldn't want to see Mr. Lang go to a pile of work if this council is going to uphold previous council's commitment to not rent it out.
Thanks for that. I think there are a few of us at least who weren't around, you know, and are involved in that decision. And so it'd be very interesting to see what what that process was and why it was determined that that's the way it would be. And that'll help us make a determination as to whether we go forward. So I think Mr. Lang reaching out and starting the process, I agree with Councillor Goering. You wouldn't want to do a whole lot more work until you get some kind of indication that we're prepared to move forward.
Yeah, agreed. So thanks for hearing me out and thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Good night. Okay, that brings us to reports, bylaws, and policies. 8.1 on the agenda is the government transfer policy development update. Bonnie, welcome.
Mayor and Council, I bring forward this evening a report on an update actually, on the government transfer policy development. You're all aware that you've been working with staff in 2023 to get the structure for a policy and guidelines. And unfortunately, that process was meant to continue after the budget in May. And there were competing priorities at that time, given the fire and subsequent events. So what I wanted to do this evening was bring back a report to council to indicate that we are ready to proceed with the next steps, but they won't necessarily be in place for our groups that will be looking for budget in the 2025 year. So what we're proposing to do is to submit the applications that were used last year to all of those groups. with a December 13th deadline for them to provide the information to us. And then we'll be able to review them for completeness. It appeared, that's what took place for the 2024 budget, and it appeared to be a successful process. So I'd like to continue that for this year so that we have that ability to put the policy and guidelines together in the beginning of 2025.
Okay, thank you very much. It's, to me, it's a little disappointing that I understand the competing interests and some of the things that happen personnel wise over the summer and late summer, early fall.
So top of the priority list for us.
Good. Are there any questions for Ms. Pike? Mrs. Pike? Counselor Goring, is your hand up? Yes, please. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just echo your disappointment. This process was started much before 2023. And totally with respect, Ms. Pike, that I know that you are referencing the process that began in 2023, but we've been working at this a lot longer than that. So I hope that this go around, it will actually get completed. And yeah, just wanted to reiterate that I too am disappointed that it's taken this long. Thanks.
Yeah. If I could just add, though, we have seen some gains in the direct agreements that we have with some of the organizations and the improvements that we've made to the grant and aid process as well. So as we went along with the process, we have been able to tick some of the boxes off, and I view this as that last piece that needs to be completed.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We've worked with with the golf course and the curling club and and others. So it's not like we haven't done anything or achieved anything. It's just would have been nice to complete it before this year's budget. But
Yes.
thank you for putting it on the top of your priority list while you're here.
And I just wanted to reiterate that there is still no process for any new groups coming in that need funding. And given where our community is over the last couple of years and this year, and so many not-for-profits are seeing a reduction in the funds that they're getting from their organizations. So not to say that the municipality would be able to supply any funding there, but it just seems that there should be a fairer mechanism for other groups to apply.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to 8.2, which is Administration Report 61, talks about the old Fort Nelson Game Warden cabin and an update to that. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This report comes back to you. We've had some previous conversations. There's been some concerns from the public raised over the last couple of years related to the game warden's cabin out at Old Fort Nelson. So council had asked for a little bit more information in a site inspection. So the site inspection did occur this summer by Tyron Engineering. They did look at the building without really opening all of the walls and like getting into the really details of it. So they were able to, as you can see in the report, give a high level review as well as the recommendation that we not attempt to move it. Just because that had come up in conversation, whether or not it could be moved to another site. We've also, staff has had the opportunity to talk to Fort Nelson First Nation staff back in October. So we did have a good conversation. There was some interest in potentially having a broader conversation about the entirety of Old Fort Nelson. But it was decided, or it was mentioned, that it would be best served in a council to council meeting. So the recommendation tonight is that that be added to the potential future agenda for a council to council meeting.
Thank you. Are there any questions? So did the engineers give any statement with respect to the condition from a safety perspective? that was one of the concerns that we had. One is, could it be moved? B, it's our responsibility. We have the lease or ownership of it, designation of ownership of it for the time being. But our concern was whether or not it was safe the way it stands. And, I don't think we were looking for what it would take to renovate it, bring it back to, some kind of a usable state. We were just looking to determine whether or not it was safe. So did they give any opinion on that?
So the inside of the building would not be safe, at this point. So that's
I mean,
why
they
they
listed
kind
a
of
bunch-
identified what would need
Yeah.
to be done to make it safe for people to enter. At this point, the outside is quite surrounded by vegetation, so it does take a significant amount of work to get into it at this point, but we may want to consider maybe some fencing or something like that.
Okay. Those are my questions. Anybody else have any questions? So there's a recommendation there. What are council's wishes? Counselor Roper?
I'll move the recommendation that regional council add the management of I'm not gonna be able to say this, Ekene, Old Fort Nelson, including the game warden cabin, to the agenda for the next council to council meeting with Fort Nelson First Nation.
Moved by Counselor Roper. Do I have a second, or Counselor Enoch? Is there any discussion about that? I think that is the next step. I think we talk about this particular building, talk about the church and the general area there to see if there's common vision between the two councils and the two communities. So
Mhm.
thanks. Counselor Enoch?
Just a comment. The church needs help because if it's not addressed, it's not going to be up much longer.
Yeah.
And that's part of history.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? I'll take that is a pass. Thank you very much. That brings us to 8.2, 8.3, the food cycler program and the options with respect to moving forward on that. Mitch, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this report is following up to the previous food cycler reports, exploring options that were requested. So we explored what Nelson did with their implementation of kind of the community-wide program. So that was all the various options that were requested previously. So I think it was the carbon filters, and then just some of the other pieces around it. So from that exploration, it kind of raised a bigger question around a community-wide or a fulsome food waste program. So with that, essentially the recommendation kind of comes back as, between the EAC comments and public interest in the food cycler units, that at minimum another pilot program is run while we explore the options for a community-wide food waste solution.
Thanks, Mitch. Are there any questions? Counselor Gerwing, please.
Yeah, I'm just a little confused as to why we wouldn't, or I guess I just want to maybe have a discussion with council about maybe, because I disagree with not doing something around the carbon refill option. It has become a barrier for some people. And if the municipality can use some of that LCAP funding to supplement the cost, I think that would be very helpful for users. Currently, it's $60 to get your carbon refill. So it is a barrier for some users. And I just would like to explore the option if we can bulk buy and then offer that at a more affordable rate for users, as Nelson gives it for free. So I'm not even suggesting that, but I would like to see us move forward with the carbon refill station. And I just not understanding why we would wait until we had a bigger project. We have 100 units out there right now. Most of them are still in use. So I would like to get feedback from council as to whether that could possibly be included in this, one of the options that Mitch has presented.
Council, any responses? I'm certainly game to look at the carbon renewal program. Are you suggesting that we do it in place of this second pilot program or in addition to it?
In addition, as you can see under the options, it's got like, I think 3 different ands in there.
Mhm.
So I would maybe suggest that we just add an and exploring options for carbon refill price reduction for users, something like that. Using
So-
that LCAP funding still.
So, so it was, so I guess just trying to understand it a little bit is in terms of those options, are you looking to just reduce the price, offer it for free? So the reason that was put in there was it's a significant cost to build the actual station. And then in addition, you have the considerations of where you're storing it, stocking it, all those kind of things. So there would need to be a partner involved with that as well, like a local grocery store or whoever would like to have that in the community. So that was kind of around the thinking of it doesn't necessarily make sense unless a larger scale project is in place.
Well, I guess that would be my question. Sorry, Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess that would be my comment is I don't understand why we would need a larger project. We have 100 units out in the community right now. We are voting tonight, hopefully, on releasing some of the LCAP funding for 100 more units. I'm sure they'll get taken up, so that's 200 units. We also have the Lomi units in our community, not part of this project, but they use the carbon refills as well. So I think that we're big enough to invest the time in this carbon refill option. And if it's a staff concern, if we don't have the capacity, then fair enough. But I guess I just would like to know the answer why. We got 200 units out, we have 100 units right out there. We're talking about 100 more units and then again the Lomi. So I think we're big enough.
Yeah, so yeah, you're not looking to do it, you're looking to explore options for it. And so I think that's, you know, that's fair. Yeah, I'm certainly open-minded to hearing what the options potentially be and or the barriers. You know, what does it take to create that carbon? Because I don't know. You know, if it's just $30, you know, it seems pretty cheap to me, but I suspect it's a bigger program than just, you know, subsidizing it to the 2.5 or even all of it. I says, you know, sometimes you get something on sale and it costs you a whole bunch of money after the fact, you know, to implement whatever it is.
Yeah, you just
so-
bulk buy,
Yeah.
Mayor, just bulk buy the carbon. They use it in fish tanks, you use it in the food cycler, you use it in the Lomis, like
Yeah.
there's, you know, different options for it. So, I mean, I think we will find that if we buy the carbon in bulk, it's going to be a lot cheaper than when I have to purchase it.
Yeah.
And the
And that-
200 other users are purchasing it at $60 through our suppliers.
Yeah, so I agree with that, but you know, we're not just gonna back a dump truck load of carbon in and have people scoop it. I mean, there's a program that's gotta go with it, right? So
Yeah, fair.
it's, yeah, so let's have a look and see what, well, sorry. Let's, vision came to my mind, but you know, let's, if council wants to move forward, let's just explore the options of that carbon program. And I had a question about, unless somebody else wants to continue with that bit, go ahead.
Just a suggestion, you'd commented saying that it would be good to have a partnership. Reach out to IJ or Save-Ons and I'm sure they're both community minded and, you know, environmentally friendly, the best of their ability. I'm sure they'd offer help if they could.
Just in line with the dump truck visual, I, It would take a very short drive and I could show you where there's 5 million acres of carbon.
Yeah. Okay. I did have a question about why we're calling this a second pilot program instead of an expansion of our program. You know, does it have something to do with, you know, working with the original partner, or why is this a second pilot instead of just an expansion?
Partly, I didn't think about it really, but if I was, yeah, I guess an expansion is definitely a better word for it. I think the ask will be again to report findings on, you know, offering the subsidized unit is report the findings and then support, or, you know, whatever it comes out looking like in terms of a potential for a larger project. So
Yeah. So yeah, so I mean, maybe it's just semantics, but let's call them, you know, because the pilot was successful. By all measures, the pilot was successful. Let's call it an expansion of a successful project and deal with the rest of it. So is there any other questions for Mitch? What are council's wishes? There is a recommendation there with an addition. Councilor Gerwin, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, I would make a motion then that, okay, Jaylene, you're gonna have to wordsmith me at the end here, but that staff work with Food Cycle Science Corporation to implement an expansion program for food waste recycling for up to 100 units in the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality, and that 15,000 from the NRM's Local Government Climate Action Program funding is allocated to support the program, and that staff work with the EAC to prepare and analyze food waste solutions and options to present to council, and that staff investigate
Options for the carbon refill.
there you go.
Okay, is that everything?
Yeah.
Okay, so moved by Councilor Gerwin. Do I have a seconder, Councilor Enox? Is there any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Are there any opposed? That passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us to 8.4 on the agenda, report number 63, the BC Provincial Nominee Program, Regional Immigration Collaboration Initiatives, and Mitch is still up on this one.
I'd like to use all the words, I
Yeah.
guess, eh? So this report here is to provide council information to council about the opportunity that the NRRM has to participate in immigration initiatives that are supported by the province. As outlined in the report, completing the enrollment doesn't mean that there's a commitment to participate in this program other than the initial training in January. There are a few things to flush out between the economic development initiatives, as well as some of the information from BCP&P, in order to understand the full ability to participate in this program. So there is no current ask from council. However, just noting that there may be in the future. And then, you know, just as part of the natural process, we'll ensure that any further asks to support will be brought to council in a timely manner. And just that participation in this program will help to develop constructive immigration into the community for any identified needs.
Okay, are there any questions? So we have been getting feedback. I've been getting a lot of feedback. Well, Mitch and I both from members of our community who are on permits to work in Canada, who are very interested in staying in our community. And you know, it's become obvious to me, even from speaking with the Chamber of Commerce and listening to some of the business people there, you know, that new Canadians are an important part of the economy here in our community, and these folks are becoming friends and neighbors, and you know, part of the fabric of the community. And I think you know, if we can support them wherever we can, we should be using whatever initiatives that we can. Fort Nelson, like other rural or remote communities, is not the same as the issues are not the same as they are in the cities. where scarcity is in competition for resources is a much bigger problem. So I reported at the last meeting that I did reach out to Minister Miller at the federal level of immigration, to his staff, and I was able to meet with them and talk to them a little bit about what our particular situation is and how it doesn't really fit with the one size fits all policy that the federal government is using right now for immigration and with the context. First of all, they basically said there's a process and each individual needs to deal with that process. And then I put it into context for her that it's, it's a small community and we could have up to, in the range of 100, 150 people that are coming due for permits, and they're a big part of the fabric of our community. And so she took the information away and said she'd get back to me. So I'm still waiting for that. But I think this report this opportunity is just one more thing that we can explore. As you said, we're not committing to anything. We're just putting the feelers out there with respect to this particular program to see what it takes. Correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So there's a few different streams, just to give you a bit more information on it. Most of it right now, as we understand it, can be essentially done in day-to-day work. But yeah, it's kind of feeling it out, seeing how, kind of testing the waters. And if we miss this enrollment, I think they've mentioned it's a 2-year period. So we wouldn't be able to quote unquote apply until that next cycle of enrollment.
Good, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? What are council's wishes? Councilor Roper?
I'll move the recommendation that the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality submit an enrollment form and declaration to participate in the BC Provincial Nominee Program, Regional Immigration Collaboration, BC PNP RIC initiatives.
Thank you. Moved by Councilor Roper. Do I have a seconder? Councilor Enax, thank you very much. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Are there any opposed? Thank you, that passes. Okay, that brings me to agenda item 8.5, the Community Fire Smart and Resiliency Committee. Hobson, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and councillors. The report before you is a follow-up to the committee of the whole meeting that we had on October the 28th, in which there was discussion around and some desire from council to explore opportunities around the development of a Community Fire Smart and Resiliency Committee as a potential committee of council. The preference seemed to be leaning towards establishing an advisory committee. So information is provided in the report for your discussion and consideration.
Thank you. Council, comments?
The sooner we can get started on this, the better off we will all be. I think that I very much appreciated Cam's presentation in the beginning of this session. I think that some of us who are watching the smoke of our local scenarios know that we're still at a very high risk in our communities. And the thing that I dislike the most about this report is that, committees do what committees do, and sometimes committees take a long time to get things done, and I get that. We don't have a lot of time to get things done, so establishing this as soon as possible and putting to work those people who know exactly what we're facing as quick as we can on that committee is in our best interest for sure.
So to that, Lisa, do you anticipate or have you thought through what a timeline might look like for the establishment at least? I know you've got 3 points there: initiation of the public expression of interest, review by staff recommendations concerning membership, and then the drafting of the terms of reference. So you've got to do the first two before you can do the third one, because I think we want the committee involved in that. And Cam's presentation made that clear that he and people that he's spoken to at least would like to be involved in that. So have you thought about those first two and how long that might take?
Yeah, so as discussed at the Northern Rockies Roundtable this morning, I don't think it's unreasonable to have a committee in place prior to Christmas. I don't think it'll take much, to have a bit of a conversation with, Sonia and Cam around representation on that committee, because it's important to make sure that we get the right people at the right table and make sure that there's broad enough representation. So I think once we have that established, we can get out an expression of interest fairly quickly. Evaluate those to make sure that they fit in those boxes that we're looking for, and then work with those people to develop a draft terms of reference. Our natural resources fire smart coordinator's first day was today. So that would be something I would be working with them on, directly to get that moving.
So would it be possible to get that I know it's a short week, but would it be possible to get that expression of interest out at least, you know, by early next week? Which then would allow us to pull everybody, you know, pull a list of potential people together, you know, by the end of next week.
Yeah, I don't think that's unreasonable. It's just how long council would like to leave that out for the public to consider. I think that's gonna be the longer period, frankly.
Yeah, and I think though that, you know, the idea of this committee has been floating around there for some time. So I think those who are interested are probably, right, they're probably ready. And so if we get that out there and distribute it widely, I'm sure that, you know, word of mouth will help to get that through. So I was just, because I'm thinking I would like to attend the first meeting that we start putting together the terms of reference. And I'm thinking like the 27th to the 4th, sometime during that week. If we could pull the first meeting together that week, it would be good to start talking about terms of reference. Because once you get the people together, you have a discussion generally about what it looks like. And I'll leave it to you. And if you'll reach out to Cam and Sonia with respect to numbers, I don't think that needs to be determined right off the bat, but at least to get some people together for that terms of reference discussion in early December. That if that's doable, I'd certainly like to see that happen. Right? I mean, this is a concept and an idea, but we really need to listen to the folks about what they think it should look like and the parameters. And Cam spoke to this, really what we're able to do, right? And with respect to the legislation. I mean, we're not responsible for a lot of the activities that we're talking about trying to have an influence on. So yeah, just trying to get the group together to determine exactly what the goals are. I think it could be a select committee. I don't think it needs to be an advisory committee. I think, you know, the select committee and our procedures bylaw that lays out the types of committees that we can have or how we establish those committees. With a select committee, we're talking about a predetermined amount of time, which I think we could say is the term of this council. It could extend beyond if the next council wants, but that's a predetermined amount of time, right? Which is little less than 2 years. And the project, I think, could be, you know, a select committee is usually for a specific project, and that's the community resiliency and implementing the wildfire plan. So I think that's the project that we could assign it to. And it could be a select committee, and we would need to get into the advice. I mean, advising is what they're doing, obviously, but I still think with respect to our procedures in the community, a select committee would work. Those are my thoughts. Anybody else have any thoughts? Oh, Cam? I'll have to get approval for you to speak to council meeting. It's just one of those things. Can I have a motion to accept Cam? Moved by Councillor Enoch, second by Councillor Roper. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Cam, the floor is yours.
On the committee and the things that was discussed with the MRI. One.
I can't hear Cam.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Can you? Right here is fine.
With regards to who would be on the committee, I don't want to discount anybody that wants to be on the committee. But it's already been made fairly clear that representation of Toad River wants to be on that committee. We definitely would want to be somebody either from the fire resiliency of the council or the fire department would want to be on that committee as well. First Nations, Fort Nelson and Prophet River. So already with people that have expressed some interests already, and then adding all those people in there, you almost already have a committee is what I'm getting at. And if committees get too large, I think they get ineffective. So that's just what was discussed today at the NRRT meeting. There's a lot of people have already expressed some interest to be involved in it. And I don't want to discount anybody that wants to jump forward and help out for sure. But there's going to be lots of work that needs to be done. So
Thanks. So
thanks.
Cam, are you willing to work with Lisa early on to sort of try to identify those groups so we can at least reach out to them?
Both Sonia and I have said that
Thank
we
you.
work with Lisa for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Mayor, my hand's up.
Oh, thank you.
So I'm a little bit confused because the recommended option is for an advisory committee, but I think I heard that you speak about you would like to see a select committee. And when I went through the rationale in the report around an advisory committee, that made sense to me. So were you intending to change that recommendation from an advisory committee to a select committee?
Well, if I remember the procedure bylaw, there's nothing in there that talks about establishing advisory committees, nor is there anything in the community charter. But a select committee is there, and essentially advisory committee is a select committee. It essentially is the select committees are making are giving advice to the council about whatever project in that time frame that you're so we talked about the word advisory, but really an advisory committee is a select committee, and we have all of the legislative as well as policy documents in place to support a select committee. So that's why, you know, that's why I believe that it is a select committee, not an advisory committee.
Well, I guess, I mean, I don't want to argue with you about it because it's just a word, but just because the Environmental Advisory Committee is an advisory committee. So just to maintain some semblance of similar as we are going through with these advisory or select committees, we should pick a lane and kind of stick with it, because I don't know that this committee is going to play a different role than the Environmental Advisory Committee does.
I hear you, but I certainly wasn't around when the Environmental Advisory Committee was established. I don't know if there were a procedural process at that time that allowed for the, you know, or is it just a name from a
Well, we went through the option.
from our legislative expectations and our own procedural bylaw, there is no such thing as advisory committee process to establish an advisory committee, but there is a process to establish a select committee. So therefore, like, whether you call it the advisory committee or not, to establish it, we need to establish it through proper procedure that we've laid out for ourselves. And so that's why I think it should be a select committee. I really don't think in the end, the work that they do is any different than advisory, but it is a select committee as far as I'm concerned. And so that's what I want to call it from the start. And I want to use the process of establishing the select committees to establish this one.
Thanks.
I like the wording in the report. Lisa, does this change of format or name affect the work you've done so far? Do we need a new report? Or is it essentially the same thing? Are we maybe getting into the weeds a little bit?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I guess defer to our corporate manager, but I don't think there's going to be that much of a difference around whether you call it advisory or select, other than, as the mayor's pointed out, there is some provisions in our procedure bylaw for a select committee.
Yeah, so our intention was to bring back at some point, bring back a more general report to get council's direction in terms of the lanes and what's the preferred nomenclature, what's the preferred approach. But frankly, it comes down to the terms of reference, which defines who is appointed to the committee, who sits as the chair versus a voting member versus a non-voting member, what their scope of reference is, how long they'll serve, how long the topic might extend. The report kind of describes that advisory committees tend to just live in perpetuity. They don't, because if it's topical, the topic can span many, many years. Whereas if you've defined a timeline that if it looks like a duck and sounds like a duck, it's a duck. So if you're intent to define a timeline for the committee and you're intending to appoint a member of council, then it fits the definition of a select committee. You can call it whatever you want, and council can actually give the direction that you would like this committee to follow the procedures of a select committee as defined in the procedure bylaw. So it's at your discretion, and councils of the past haven't necessarily followed the process to a T, but we also didn't have a perfectly defined process either. So, in terms of assigning or appointing advisory committees, aside from they have terms of reference and they have appointed members and that's how they function. So, yeah, so it is honestly up to you as a group, what you'd like to call this thing, who you'd like to appoint. And then obviously what the kind of scope of it would be. And it sounds as though you'd like to involve some community members in defining that with you.
Okay, so how about this? How about we change the recommendation to say that regional council establish a select committee called the Fire Smart and Wildfire Resiliency Advisory Committee, focused on initiatives throughout the ... Are we comfortable with that?
I am.
We're setting it up as a select committee. Call it advisory committee if you like.
Was that a motion or was that a
No,
suggestion?
it was a suggestion that we add that in. So if you'd like to make the motion with that in there, then that was my suggestion.
Sure, may I?
Okay, please.
I'll go ahead and make the motion that regional council establish a Fire Smart and Wildlife Resiliency Select Committee focusing on initiatives throughout the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality, and that staff initiate a public expression of interest to solicit members to the committee for regional council's appointment, and that terms of reference for the community is drafted for regional council's consideration.
Moved by Councillor Roper. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Souls, thank you. Is there any discussion? Councillor Green, I see your hand up.
Thanks. At this time, are we going to appoint a representative from council? So that I'm just trying to dot all of the i's and cross all of the t's so that the committee can get up and started and running.
Yeah, we can do that. We have to do that. I certainly would like to hear from the group that is selected with respect to what the long-term purpose and goals are. So that could inform me with respect to who from council should be appointed or could be appointed. So that's my thoughts with respect to that. I don't know if it's putting the cart before the horse, but I certainly would like to hear from the folks before I appoint somebody. So that was my thought process there. Did you have a particular way that you would like to have done it? Would you like to appoint somebody now or?
Well, I'm not the mayor, but.
Yet. You're
If
not
I
the mayor
was
yet.
the mayor. No, I just really feel that you would be the best representative from council. And I don't know if hearing from the committee could change my mind on that. I mean, maybe it could, I don't know, but like that's where I was headed.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for the vote of confidence there. It certainly will impact my decision, I think. So I'd like to do that first.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Okay. Is there any further comments then on the resolution? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. You guys can stay for the whole meeting if you want.
It's not strong.
Okay, that brings us to point 8.6, which is the development variance permit application DVP 2402 to vary the paving standards. Rhoda, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and councillors. So this report is associated with the development variance permit application submitted by Mr. Batten. Mr. Batten basically has already installed the chip seal on the property located at 4501 50th Street. And the chip seal is not the required standard in our bylaw. So he has been looking for a variance to the paving standards. And I have in my report, I have indicated the pros and cons of chip seal, as well as a comparison of it with asphalt and concrete, as well as some other considerations for council to review. So we are seeking council directions on this application.
Thank you. Comments? Councilor next, please.
From my years of working on the highway, back in the day, the Alaska Highway was fully, that's what we did. That's how we, from one end to the next, it was chip seal. 20 years ago, it was a pretty good product, and I can't imagine how good it is now. It's a parking area, you know, the odd trucks going in and out of there. It's easy to maintain. It's easy to fix if there's something wrong with it. And in this day and age, like I say, with all the, you know, refining they've done with the chip seal, it lasts as long as asphalt.
Thank you. Councilor Souls.
I think that this is a this is a very good report that shows us how the process of developing bylaws happen at certain times and they happen based on what's going on at the time. And I recall the developing of the bylaws that actually required the paving in these sites. And it was in an era where Fort Nelson was absolutely booming and there was growth happening and shops being built and so on. And in this particular case, I am fully in support of the chip seal being a solution for that, just for a number of reasons. First of all, is that even in the era of that particular business and its involvement at that time in the past, you can see in their yard and so on the stacks and stacks and stacks of bins that are sitting there unused, which is actually in a bin business is the indicator of a shrinking business, and it has continued to shrink. And I just feel that the I too look at the small footprint, the small area of the chip seals at where it sits now, and the amount of traffic in there is very low. And I think that there is no harm whatsoever in supporting chip seal, the variance.
Councilor Rope.
Yeah, I appreciate the bylaw requiring the asphalt. I think that is a good bylaw to have, and I wouldn't want to set a precedence for others to use chip seal in every circumstance. But I think the location that we're talking about, the type of business, the economy we're in right now, I think this all points to us, making this consideration to allow the chip seal, of course, without setting a precedence.
Thank you. So, Councilor Growing, please.
Thanks. Yeah, I have a few different thoughts on this. First of all, staff doesn't recommend that we do this. Secondly, there have been other situations that haven't been where the company hasn't lived up to what the bylaws states. The bylaw was there before the company moved into that land. Part of that chip seal, I don't care if it's chip seal or paved, but it's a mud pit right now. So if you go in there to take your recycling, and it's rained or snowed or anything else, it's very unpleasant. And there are people that don't recycle because that's our only depot. and it's really, really muddy at many times out of the year. So, I mean, Kyle is not here to actually tell me on these maps, because you know me and maps, but when I look at it, I don't think that the chip seal option is going all the way into where the recycling depot is. Maybe it does, but I just can't ascertain that from these pictures. I think it stops at where that trailer is, which is in front of where the recycling depot is. So I don't know. And then I guess my last point that I wanted to make is other companies have lived up to the expectations of this bylaw, and I fully understand where Councillor Souls is coming from, that the bylaw was developed in a different time. But if we are willing to not uphold our bylaw, then perhaps the bylaw needs to be changed for everybody, not just for one company. So yeah, that's at this time, I wouldn't support this variance application for those reasons. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much. I have sympathy for this application. And thank you, Councillor Gerwing, for pointing out those bigger, because you're absolutely right to take this individually is like spot zoning to some degree. And I do think I agree with Councillor Enex that the product itself has improved over the years and perhaps is adequate. And I do believe that the zoning bylaw review probably will come rapidly after our review of the entire community plan. And I certainly feel in this day and age that that's an adequate product. My question was whether or not the original expectation of the property owner was to pave the entire property, or was it just the entrance and parking lot that they were required to pave?
So according to our bylaw, they are required to pave. We take the paving deposit for the required parking, off-street parking spaces, as well as maneuvering aisle and connection to the highway.
Yeah.
So that is the bare minimum for which we require the paving deposit.
Right. Okay. So, and that's what he gave his paving deposit on, was the parking area and the connection of the parking area to the street. So the rest, there was no expectation that the rest of it. However, maintenance of that becomes the issue. And I think that's the issue of the mud, right? And the tracking of the mud from his property from the rest of his property that's not required to be paved, onto the parking area, and then ultimately onto the street, which then we're responsible for cleaning. And so in a development variance permit, do we have the right to set parameters with respect to maintenance? If we were to give a development variance permit, could we require, some minimum expectation that, mud and dirt is not being carried out onto the street? Which then gives us a visual, something visual to hold him to, or, with respect to mud and the mud coming out onto the street, and therefore the parking area being covered in mud. Which, if we're able to do that, it should take care of Councillor Gerwing's concern of, the mud pit, as she referred to it. So is there the ability in a development variance permit to put restrictions on it or expectations?
The development variance permit does, it is added onto the title of the land, so they would have to follow that, but
You can enter,
Can we-
you can enter into an agreement as part of the condition for approval of permit, any kind of agreement.
Hold deposit. And okay. So those things would probably have to be discussed with the owner first as part of the development variance permit process. Is that correct? And so, because my next question was going to be the enforcement. So that's the deposit bit, right? That you could withhold and or use some of that deposit if you felt you needed to do something. So essentially, if you need to enforce the bylaw, you go to the person who has a development variance permit and say, we are going to use this. If you don't clean this up, we're gonna use this part of your deposit to clean the street or whatever. So therefore they're losing money. So that there's a potential enforcement opportunity there. Are we in general agreement that that can happen? Yeah, please come to the table.
So one of the pieces of advice that we sought from one of the professional advisors that we have was that if we did proceed with chip seal, then their recommendation would be to withhold a maintenance deposit essentially. So, but one of the things that Rod has outlined in her report is right now, we're actually deficient on that paving deposit because we're waiting for the trailers on the site to be moved and then move that over to a deposit. So we're actually deficient on the paving deposit that was supposed to be submitted in 2022. So just for council's consideration.
So the expectation then would be that we negotiate, that be, if we go ahead with this development variance permit, that be bumped up potentially.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay.
And include ramifications for non-payment.
Non-payment of the deposit?
Yeah, because like as was pointed out in the report, there's money owing since 2022. So if we are looking at allowing something, and make, or giving some sort of a variance and then having enforcement and then charging an additional paving, then we have to have some kind of mechanism to actually collect that.
Right, so the expectation is that they come up to they come into compliance with their existing, yeah, so that could also be part of the development permit, variance permit. So that all, you don't proceed with it and give it to them until you have agreement from them, right? That they're prepared to do those things.
Right.
So, yeah, so I'm comfortable with moving forward with the development variance permit. If there's a deposit for maintenance, that's to be determined, and if we think that's enough, just to bring it up to what the original expectation was, I'm certainly comfortable for that. And if we then do go ahead with this, I think we need to add it into the zoning bylaw review that I'm sure will come soon after the one that we're doing now. So those are my thoughts. So are there any other thoughts?
I just have one, and that is that the blanket nature of the bylaw is such that many others who have had to or faced the idea of having to pave their yards are no longer here. Many of those shops that sit empty, but were not finished with paving, and they are no longer even here. And so let's not make it any harder for the ones that do live here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, may I add again?
Sure.
100% agree, Councillor Souls. I just want to respect that businesses have done paving as early as last year to parts of their parking lot because that was a requirement. So I always have to go back to that as well.
Yeah.
Just on that point, Councillor Gerwin, even this year, when we went for the site inspection, we have had other 2 properties who had complied with the zoning bylaw.
Exactly. And that's where I struggle. I truly struggle with this because there are owners that have complied at their own obvious expense with the bylaw. And now we're thinking about giving a variance. So.
Yeah. Okay. What are your wishes? That we start the process, development variant process, and allow staff to negotiate the parameters of what that development variant permit looks like?
I would go ahead and make that recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Councilor Roper, second by Councilor Enax. I'm just waiting for Jaylene to finish typing. So have you got an idea what that, because it's going to be different than what the recommendation is, right? So.
Yeah, so for clarity, are you waiting, would you like to wait on the public notification process?
Jaylene, I can't hear you.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Yeah, so,
Yeah, so the public notification period wouldn't start until there's some kind of an agreement with respect to what that development variance permit is going to look like, correct? So I think we're asking that we start on the process and authorize staff to negotiate what that development variance permit looks like based on the discussion that we've had here. And then if if it comes back to us and we're comfortable with it as a group, then it goes to public notification. I think that would be the appropriate process. I'm looking to Lisa. Yeah, yeah, okay. So could you read back the
that staff proceed with negotiations with the property owner on the development variance permit based on the conditions discussed, and if acceptable, it could proceed to public notification. So assuming we're bringing it back once
Correct.
negotiations are complete.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Discussions on that? Seeing none, all in favor? Are there any opposed?
Me, I wish to be recorded, please.
Thank you. That passes. Okay. Yeah, that brings us to 8.7. The zoning amendment bylaw 228, 2024, third reading and adoption.
So this report is associated with the zoning amendment application, which was presented and given first and second reading on October 15th, and then public hearing was held today just before this meeting. As per legislative requirement, the referral was submitted to the Ministry of Transportation, and we also received the approval letter from them, which is attached with the report. We provided notice to the affected property owners, and of course, the public hearing was held, so all legislative requirements has been fulfilled.
Thank you.
There was one comment actually we received on social media, which is in support of the business. I will just read it loud. It says, "Crossing fingers, it goes through our town. Can use some more businesses opening up."
Thank you. Good. Okay, do I have a mover for third reading and adoption, please? Moved by Councillor Enox, second by Councillor Roper. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to correspondence. I think we've done with all the reports. Yeah, that brings us to correspondence. So there is a letter there from Mrs. Vandersteen, Executive Director, Fort Nelson District Chamber of Commerce, fee waiver for the community hall. For discussion. Somebody put it on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Souls, a seconder, Councillor Enox. Thank you very much. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. It's on the floor for discussion. What are your wishes? Enox?
I think we could waive the favor for the community hall for the chamber.
Okay. Councillor Roper? Was that a motion?
Oh, are we gonna have a discussion first?
Sounded like, oh,
You said it, I was just gonna agree.
sounded
Yes,
like,
I
it
think
sounded
it's
like a motion to me. Do I have a seconder?
seconded.
Councillor Roper, do I have a discussion? Go ahead.
Okay.
Councillor, go right.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've got no problem, but I'm just wondering, in fairness, this would be we would just be giving them one of their days early, right? We're not doing an additional day. So I think if I remember correctly, we agreed that organizations would have 4 options to use facilities within the rec center at no charge. So would this be one of the chamber's 4 options for 2025?
That would be for us to determine. So I personally feel that should be the way it is.
Me
The
too.
policy is not actually supposed to start until January the 1st, 2025. So if we entertain this, then I think we can set whatever parameters we like.
Well, I think in my quest for fairness, I think it should be one of the 4, and we are just acknowledging that this event is taking place, I don't know, 3 weeks before the new policy comes into effect.
Would we need an amendment
Don't know.
or just direction to staff that that's the way that this is gonna be?
That's fine. We can take it as direction.
Okay.
Because it was moved and seconded, so you would need to amend it.
Yeah. Okay.
But we can take the additional detail as,
Okay, so I will ask Counselor Gerwing if she would like the motion amended to say that this would be one of the four options, I guess.
Yes.
Okay, so I have an amendment proposed by Counselor Gerwing that that would be an inclusion to the end of the recommendation that this is the use of one of the four opportunities for the Chamber of Commerce for the 2025 year. Do I have a seconder for that emotion? I have a second, Councillor Eunax. Is there any discussion with respect to the amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment? Are there any opposed? Seeing none, the amendment carries. So I will call the question on the resolution as amended. All in favor? Are there any opposed? Seeing none, that passes. Thank you. Okay. We have 5 pieces of correspondence for information. We have letter from Douglas Scott. We have letter to Lawrence Forsberg, and we have 2 council information packages. Sorry, so 4, not 5.
Recommend that we receive for information.
Moved by Counselor Soul, second by Counselor Roper. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. There are no new business items. Are there any councillor reports?
I have a report.
Thank you, Counselor Roper.
I was invited to attend the Accessibility and Inclusion Committee meeting held on October 30th. This was my first time attending, and I was actually told that it was the first time a standing councillor has ever attended. I'd like to thank committee member Christy Lear for the invitation and to the committee itself for the warm welcome. One of the items of discussion was the accessibility lift for the 25-meter pool. It's my understanding that the lift has been inoperable for some time and is in need of repair as well as a regular maintenance schedule. Not having the lift has impacted the quality of life for those who depend on assistance accessing the pool, and the lack of pool access further impedes associated activities such as use of the new aqua bikes. I spoke with a member of our recreation team and received some historical information on the lift. I understand they've since reached out for a work order to assess the lift and facilitate the needed repairs. I'm confident that they have the knowledge and skill set to make the lift operational soon. Looking ahead, it's clear that the lift is due for replacement soon. And there are actually better lifts available right now that would make accessing the pool even easier than the capabilities of the current lift. So I'd like to see a regular maintenance schedule put in place for the current lift so that any future investments are protected and available for the community to use. And I'm hoping to see a replacement in the 2025 budget if possible.
Okay, thank you for that. So is that a request by the committee to the staff?
Well, they didn't have quorum at that particular meeting, but I would imagine that a recommendation would be coming through. It seemed
Okay.
like a priority.
Yeah, because really that should go to the staff, right, for the review of that piece of equipment. So I think thanks for the report. I think we can probably just hand that off to staff with respect to working at the pool to see what the issue is there. Okay, thank you. Sure.
So following the last meeting, information was provided to Director Jonathan Roberts at the Recreation Center, and he's now working with Ms. Lear directly on the lift.
Oh, perfect.
Great news. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other reports? Councilor Eunax?
November 7th, we had the Heritage Society meeting, and a reminder for all staff, employees, anybody that wants to lend a hand this Saturday, 11 o'clock at the museum. We're decorating for the celebration of lights. December 1st is the 48th annual AGM. It's a little different this year. They're going to have it at the Lamplighters. It'll be a lunch 1 to 3 p.m., $20 per person. So if you're going to go, email the museum or let Kim know. I attended the Remembrance Day at the community hall on Monday and it was fabulous. And I was glad to see Leona and the kids first time ever being there drumming and singing. They practiced that song for about 3 months. So it was a great job.
Good. Thank you very much. Are there any other counselors? Okay, I also attended the November 11th Remembrance Day ceremony. I thought it went across with great success. I had received some feedback that people were happy to see that our community is putting on, making an effort to make that ceremony really appreciative of our veterans. So that was good. I attended the Northern Rockies Roundtable meeting today. Several topics discussed from that group. First one was prescribed. First of all, I guess I should say there was no provincial representatives there. A couple of reasons. One, they're still sort of in the interregnum phase where they're trying to figure out what the province is going to do and who's doing what there. The other is that they're really not supporting this group formally. They think that the Northeast table out of Fort St. John is adequate for the topics, but it became apparent today that we really do need support, that the topics that we're discussing are topical to Fort Nelson, and we can talk about Caribou or but things like the Nonda Creek Road and the Bison issue, they're really issues for us. And either we get the province to support this table, or else we really have to start making these issues get onto that Northeast BC roundtable and make it apparent to them that that our issues are important to us enough that we're prepared to voice our concerns at that table, which takes time away from their meeting, right? So if that's all they're going to set up, then that might be the way we have to do it. But I did commit that I would talk to the statutory decision maker who made that decision not to support this table, based on reasons that she had. She did tell me at one point why they did that, or why she made that decision. But I'm hoping to influence that decision so that she can put forward the resources necessary to support our table. Anyways, prescribed fire. There was a report there it wasn't a formal report, but the Wild Sheep Foundation did a couple of burns. And there were a couple of minor range burn approvals given to outfitters, and apparently they did do some ignitions up the highway. We talked at length about the discussion that we had with respect to our fire resiliency committee, and how that group is interested in hearing how the resiliency committee gets up and going. There was no formal update on the Bison, but there was a lot of discussion about it. We learned that the Bison up the highway, or many of them or a bunch of them are collared. The Bison on Highway 77 belong to the Northwest Territories, really, and nobody's really doing much with them. I think there's some basic questions that need to be asked of the province and those folks that are responsible for that whole Bison transplant program. What was it intended to do? Is it doing that? Are they still supporting it? Should the Bison just be living along the highway and causing grief, or are they going to do something to try to lure those Bison back off the highway? I think back to the basics needs to be discussed. Skooks Landing, there's a lot of action happening at Skooks Landing. Northeast BC Wildlife Fund, kicked in a bunch of money. The first phase, which was essentially the clearing of the land and the basic landscaping of the parking lot for that facility, has been completed. Fort St. John, there was a bunch of people that put in resources and supplied some money for them to get up there with some equipment and actually do that. The Cascade provided 2 crews of laborers and tree cutters, tree fallers, and so they really, and so I've asked for a list of those names because I think I'd like to thank them. I mean, this is a a piece of infrastructure, I guess, that's being improved in our regional, in our region, and I think those people should be congratulated and thanked for what they did up there so far. Phase two, there's a lot of money there, is the completion of the parking lot, final grading and getting a cap put on so that it'll last for a long time. You know, there's an expectation that'll be up to $50,000, which looks like they have a lot of that money secured already, ready to do phase two. And then phase three, ultimately, they'll be working with the Cascadeni, and that's the putting in with forestry as well, bathrooms and signage. The intent is for it to be a fairly minimal parking lot with some basic signage and washroom facilities there. It's not gonna be a real fancy thing, but so that should be able to be completed fairly easily as well. So you know, big thanks to all of those folks that are putting in the time to get that done. Yeah, Jim and Tom Fulton are really the two that are leading it. So big thanks to those, and I'd like to get a formal thank you out to those. No update really on the moose limited entry hunt. The Fort Nelson First Nation is doing some baseline species counts, and hopefully they'll pick up some habitat updates as well. And you know, we really do. And when we were in UBCM, we also talked to the Minister of Environment about doing species counts, habitat, you know, an evaluation of habitat out there after these burns, to really start looking at both the moose population as well as the caribou population, and whether or not these LEHs should be extended, or whether we can get a return to open season hunting for these species. There was some discussion about looking to the Yukon for, you know, updating the electrical grid or improving the electrical grid from the lower part of BC right up to the Yukon, which of course hopefully would come through here and give us that opportunity. So there was, you know, no formal discussions happening. These were just some news articles that people had picked up and they forwarded to us for our thoughts. And finally, there was a discussion on the Nonda Creek road. You know, there wasn't a formal update really because nobody has requested the tenure on that road. The government agencies are not going to upgrade that road. You know, it really starts to get complicated when you think about, well, there's the crossing, there's the road tenure and the road maintenance itself. There's a lot of different things that. Then there was some thought that perhaps that could be broken up and discussed, but we haven't made a decision with respect to that road, because really nobody's put the decision to us as to whether we should make a decision one way or the other. But there was, you know, there seems to be some support for upgrading that road or repairing that, not the road, but at least repairing the crossing where it's washed out to continue to provide access up to the mountains and the area there. So it was 2 hours of discussion, and there was really no decisions made except that we are looking to try to get the province to support this table a little more than it has. And I think that pretty much covers off everything that we talked about today. That's my report.
Just a suggestion too, that in the reaching out to government regarding the need for a more Northern Rockies centric or funding to look after our own needs, make sure you have that same conversation with our new MLA, because we might as well get him in the loop.
Yep. Thank you. Let me add that to my notes. Thanks. Okay, that's council reports. Business outstanding. So we do have one piece of business outstanding. If you recall, at the special meeting on October the 2nd, the fire chief gave us a bit of an update with respect to some new provincial regulation saying that we needed to designate fire inspectors and fire investigators. And so to that end, staff have put together a resolution essentially that does that. So I'll read the resolution and see if there's any questions or comments. So that until such time that amendments to the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality Officer Positions and Delegation of Authority Bylaw number 138, 2017 are adopted, council designate as required under the Fire Safety Act as fire inspectors, all full-time permanent firefighters, the fire chief, the deputy fire chief, the chief fire prevention officer of the Northern Rockies Fire Rescue, and as the fire investigator, the fire chief of the Northern Rockies Fire Rescue. So that's the recommended resolution that we put on the floor. Are there any questions about that? I think it's fairly straightforward. And, you know, the bylaw that we were talking about, we talked about this at the committee of the whole meeting earlier today about restructuring that. So we're in the process of doing that now. Okay, can I have a mover for that motion, please? Moved by Councillor Solz, second by Councillor Roper. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Are there any opposed? That passes. Thank you. Are there any notice of motions for the next regular council meeting? Seeing none, is there any public that wishes to speak to an agenda item? Mrs. Vandersteen, please. You're on the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just wanted to speak to the earlier administration report on the PMP project and immigration in general. Meeting today with the BC Chamber. And as the mayor and Ms. Thompson are aware, we have currently a Northeast committee sitting that's talking about immigration and the potential IRCC project. And that encompasses Chetwynd and Fort St. John and us and Dawson Creek. And Tumbler Ridge. However, this came out of some of the resort municipalities and struggling to both maintain current temporary foreign workers and the ability to get more with the changes that have happened to the legislation. They have also had conversations with Minister Miller's office and not particularly successful ones. So I did make a recommendation to the BC Chamber today that we look at this more from a provincial perspective. Minister Miller's office had kind of pushed them off towards the province and said, well, you really should talk to the province when we all know it's a federal jurisdiction. So hoping to bring back together maybe a slightly larger group and perhaps we can all meet and have a more fulsome discussion on this whole issue and go as one voice and maybe have a little extra oomph to our requests. Thanks so much.
Thank you. When I get my meeting with Minister Miller, we'll do that. Okay. Is there anybody else? Anybody online? No? Okay, so I need a resolution that the meeting be closed pursuant to section 91C of the Community Charter, Labor Relations and other employee relations issues. Moved by Councillor Enox, second by Councillor Roper. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We will take a brief meeting and then go in camera. A brief break, please. Thank you. We've finished our in-camera portion of the meeting. There is nothing to rise and report from the in-camera portion. Adjournment is in order of the regular council meeting. Moved by Councillor Enox, second by Councillor Roper. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everybody. That's the end of our meeting. Thanks for joining.
Okay, good night.
Good night.